John Edward Jones, Nutty Putty Cave. In November 2009, Utah's Nutty Putty Cave became the scene of one of the most haunting tragedies in modern cave history. John Edward Jones, a 26-year-old medical student, entered the hydrothermal cave with friends and family just before Thanksgiving. Known for its narrow, winding passageways with names like the Birth Canal and Scout Eater, Nutty Putty had become infamous among local cavers. John had accidentally crawled into a narrow fissure that he believed was the correct passage, only to find himself stuck headfirst into a 18-inch wide crack, his body trapped at a downward angle. Rescue teams worked tirelessly for more than 24 hours, experimenting with pulleys, drills, and widening techniques in hopes of pulling him out. His attempts to contact his family only added to his heartache as his strength waned. Despite all efforts, John's position made rescue impossible, and after 27 agonizing hours, he died, still trapped in the rock. Authorities made the difficult decision to seal the passage permanently, trapping him inside. The story of John Edward Jones remains a chilling reminder of human fragility and the harsh nature of caves. Neil Moss, Peak Cavern. In March 1959, a young Oxford student named Neil Moss descended into Peak Cave in Derbyshire, England, with a group of fellow cavers. Just 20 years old, Neil was eager to prove himself in the newly discovered passages of what locals called Devil's Ass, one of Britain's most notorious caves. A slim and athletic man, he volunteered to enter a winding vertical tunnel that would later bear his name, Moss Chamber. However, the descent turned disastrous. As he struggled to get over loose rocks, the ladder beneath him shifted, and he became stuck in an 18-inch wide limestone crevice. Rescuers rushed to the scene, dropping ropes and running oxygen tubes through the narrow passage, but the air was highly contaminated. Any attempt to pull him out only made his breathing worse. The volunteers worked in shifts of nearly 24 hours, their bodies pushed to the brink by exhaustion and toxic air. By the next morning, the silence from below confirmed what everyone feared. Neil was gone. At his father's request, his body was never found. The pit was sealed with rocks, leaving him buried where he fell, a permanent reminder of the dangers below. Floyd Collins, Sand Cave. In January 1925, Floyd Collins, a veteran caver from Kentucky, entered Sand Cave in hopes of discovering a new passage that could become a lucrative tourist attraction. Collins had gained attention years earlier for his discovery of the stunning Crystal Cave, but its remote location had limited visitors. Sand Cave, located near a busy road, seemed like his chance to strike it lucky. Armed with only an oil lamp, Collins crawled deep into its narrow limestone passageways. As he tried to turn back, his foot kicked off a heavy boulder that crushed his ankle, trapping him in a hole so tight he could barely move his arms. For the next 17 days, Sand Cave became the scene of one of America's first media frenzies. Reporters, engineers, and thousands of onlookers crowded outside as rescue teams battled falling rocks, bitter cold, and endless delays. The newspapers reported the news daily, turning Collins into a tragic national figure. By the time rescuers finally reached him, he was incapacitated. His death shocked the nation, making him remembered not just as a cave explorer, but as a haunting symbol of human vulnerability in the hidden depths of the earth. Marek Fox Nowak, Wielka Śnieżna. In August 2019, Poland's deepest cave, Wielka Śnieżna, became the scene of a modern tragedy that shocked the world of caving. Marek Fox. Nowak, a respected and experienced cave explorer, had joined a team exploring the vast, icy labyrinth beneath the Tatra Mountains. The system is notorious for its complexity, with sheer drop-offs, flooded passages, and narrow passages that challenge even the most skilled explorers. When heavy rains hit, the water level inside the cave rose unexpectedly, turning the familiar tunnels into death traps. Marek and his two companions were suddenly cut off, forced to fight freezing streams of water on their way back. Rescue teams worked tirelessly, traversing kilometers of narrow tunnels and icy water, but the operation was slowed by collapsing rocks and rising floodwaters. As the days passed, divers and rescuers from across Europe converged, but the cave seemed determined to hold its victims. Marek died deep underground, beyond the reach of rescue, while his teammates faced a similar fate. The Wielka Śnieżna tragedy reminded the world that even in the modern age, nature can still overwhelm human skill, preparation, and endurance. Mossdale Caverns. On the 24th of June 1967, the Yorkshire Dales became the scene of Britain's worst caving disaster. A group of young and ambitious members of the University of Leeds Caving Association set out to explore Mossdale Caverns, a cave system notorious for its claustrophobic passageways, poor air circulation, and constant risk of flooding. Despite its dangerous reputation, the lure of delving deeper into its lesser-known passages proved irresistible. The weekend began with warm summer weather, but rain elsewhere on the moor had fed into underground streams. As the group entered an area known as the Rough Passage, a sudden flood struck. 2 members near the entrance managed to escape and raise the alarm, but 6 others were trapped deep inside. Rescue teams battled mud, cold water, and dangerous squeezes, but the flood sealed their fate. After days of struggle, the authorities finally accepted the grim reality. At the family's request, the flooded passages were sealed permanently, trapping the victims inside the cave. The Mossdale tragedy remains a haunting reminder of how beauty and curiosity can quickly turn to disaster underground. Józef Guzik, Wielka Śnieżna. In February 1969, tragedy struck Poland's deepest cave, Wielka Śnieżna, a place already notorious for its icy, treacherous vertical tunnels. Józef Guzik, a seasoned Polish cave explorer, was on an ambitious expedition to map the unexplored region during the harsh winter. At the time, caving was not only a sport, but also a symbol of resilience for the young explorers, who sought to push the limits of their endurance beneath the Tatra Mountains. As the expedition advanced, the extremely cold and narrow passages slowed their progress. Flooded tunnels and frozen rock posed constant dangers, but Józef continued to push deeper, determined to continue. Somewhere along the way, disaster struck. He became trapped in one of the narrow, icy passages with no way to escape. Rescue efforts were quickly thwarted by collapsing rock, freezing water, and the remoteness of the chamber in which he lay. Cut off from light, warmth, and human contact, Józef died at the foot of the mountain. His death remains etched in Polish caving history as a grim reminder of how ruthlessly Wielka Śnieżna could turn ambition into an eternal grave. Mass deaths at Oghoff Cave. In 1952, South Africa suffered one of its darkest cave tragedies. Oghoff Cave, a remote cave system known for its narrow passageways and underground streams, became the scene of a mass death that shocked the local community. A group of 8 young explorers, eager to challenge themselves in the cave's winding passages, entered unaware that a storm was brewing in the mountains. What started as an adventure quickly turned into disaster. As heavy rain swept across the surface, floodwaters rushed into the cave at a terrifying rate. Deep inside, the group had no chance of retreat. Rising waters filled the narrow tunnels, cutting off any escape routes. Within minutes, the 8 explorers were trapped, overwhelmed by the rushing water and suffocating in total darkness. Rescuers arrived, but the cave's flooded passages proved impenetrable. A few days later, search efforts were abandoned, and the victims were mourned as lost forever in the depths. The Oghoff Cave disaster has become one of the most haunting reminders of the brutal power of nature and the fragility of human ambition when faced with the unexpected, unstoppable forces below. Szek Exley, Zakatan Synode. In April 1994, the world of cave diving lost one of its greatest pioneers when Szek Exley died in Mexico's Zakatan Synode. Known worldwide for his unparalleled skill and daring record-breaking dives, Exley had mapped some of the most dangerous underwater cave systems on Earth. But Zakatan was a challenge unlike any other, a 300-meter deep, submerged sinkhole that plunged into darkness. notorious for its deadly depths and unpredictable dangers. Exley descended with the intention of setting a new depth record, backed by years of experience and a mastery of technique. But as he descended, Zacaton became increasingly unforgiving. Delirium, extreme pressure, and the grueling demands of managing air took their toll even on a diver of his caliber. Somewhere near 300 meters below, his body finally gave out. Rescue was impossible. He was lost in the very abyss he had sought to conquer. His death reverberated throughout the diving community, reminding the world that even legends are not immune to the rigors of nature. To this day, Zacaton remains a monument to Exley's courage and a warning about the thin line between triumph and tragedy.